Okay, so today I'm going to officially bring back a format I've talked about a lot on this channel, which is my old debate format from over a decade ago, from 2013. I did it from about 2013 to 2014 on my old channel, and it was at times it was called the Court of Reason. I also gave it other names depending on what I was doing with it. But basically, I would debate various topics. I would often be the judge and sort of the moderator of it, more so than actually making the cases myself. But I made a lot of terms for it, a lot of my own little phrases, and stimuli, acme, and all these different things that I'll probably explain later. But the point is that it's been a great sort of structure and foundation for debate. So even in the years since, even though I haven't done it formally since then, I've used it to kind of discuss so many topics and analyze things, and just the whole core tenet of it was objectivity. So just by simply looking at a situation objectively or a topic, it can illuminate so many things for you. So a great example right now, just to sort of show you the technique that goes into it, like you can look at politics right now in the United States, right? For Donald Trump versus the Joe Biden or the Democratic Party or Kamala Harris, whatever, right? Objectivity would show you that there's two sides here, like, oh, people who love Trump no matter what because they feel like he's being undermined by the system, or that everybody's out to get him, like in politics, and trying to indict him and trying to give him constant negative coverage. So that's one side will dig in on the Trump side, supporting him because they feel like he's being treated unfairly, which in some ways that's valid. And then the other side, the other side will buy into that and say, well, he is that bad, and so we're going to oppose him no matter what. But it's a false duality where it's like, you don't have to be on one side or the other. So now they're going to blindly vote for Democrats just to spite him. But the objective perspective might be, okay, you might still not like him, but then you'll have a higher standard and say, okay, let me vote for an independent then and break out of this false duality. That's the term I would use a lot. And instead vote for an independent. So it's still consistent with, oh, he's a big bad guy, but also it's realizing, oh, we have a threat of a one party state on the other side, and etc. Like, it doesn't mean we have to give power to the other major political party that has a lot of issues too, right? You can kind of find a middle ground or find another option. So that's where the objectivity comes in. So yeah, I would sometimes use what I'm going to use here today, Ace Attorney Online, where it's like a chat room using all the Ace Attorney models. You can use the characters, the animations, all the sprites and everything, and the music and stuff in the background. And so this is a very cool program that I used, again, probably around that same time. Might have been the last time I used it. So this is part of my Throwback Thursday format that I've been doing. So the first two episodes I did Town of Salem. It's basically just, the point is that I go back and play something that I haven't played in a long time. So Town of Salem I hadn't played in years, so I played that twice. I like doing it as a two-part miniseries at least, so 2 episodes each. So I did 2 episodes of Town of Salem, and then I did 2 episodes of WoW Season of Discovery, which I guess that I had played only 6 months back, but still, it counts. And then I did WoW Cataclysm Classic, which I hadn't played since 2011 when it, obviously first came out. And then the last 2 episodes I did Ace Attorney Online in a different sense. It's like just called Attorney Online, I think, where it's the case maker. And that I had done like 15 years ago. I remember, like a super long time ago. And so I just tried to make my own cases. So it was a one step ahead, where it was more so a short story than even a case. So that combines like my writing streams. It's a throwback to my writing streams more so than even my than an Ace Attorney game. And so is this. Like, this isn't me actually playing an Ace Attorney game. It'll be me actually doing my debate format more so, but just using this as a template for it to make it more interesting. And so what you have is the ability to see that, yeah, the last 2 episodes I did the one step ahead. So the first episode I sort of just introduced all the characters and gave the premise. And then the second episode I sort of did the storyboard. So I didn't really finish it because there'd be too much detail with, I didn't really worry about the case solving aspect. It was more so just about the characters and the, the overall events that I was focusing on. But no, it could serve as both a short story and a case. Yeah, that was a good excuse to do that. So again, it's a throwback to Ace Attorney, which I haven't played an Ace Attorney game now in a while, but also to my writing streams of the past where I would do short stories and different things. So now we get to do Ace Attorney, but not really, and another format, going back to my debate format instead. So it's basically a chat room thing, which I'll show in a second, but the whole point is that I would sometimes actually use that for my debate format. Sometimes I would do video chat, sometimes I would do other things, but the point is that this would give people a chance to come in. They could just, wait their turn. You have one person on each side making a case. So, like, it could be any topic. It wouldn't really be politics all the time. It would be sometimes very existential things. It's hard to even explain, but you would go in and I would be, again, more so the judge and the moderator most of the time. So you'd have a defense prosecution. So like it could be, religion, like a Christian on one side and an atheist on the other side, just hypothetically, or, pro-life, pro-choice, those kind of topics, whatever it might be. And so you can have these sort of nuanced discussions, but again, it was always in the context of objectivity. So that's why, it was called the court of reason. Like, so I could strike down something as ad hominem, like, oh, that's not a very good argument if it's a fallacy. And so this is where I came up with all my own terms that I would use, and I would use it to sort of inform the proceedings. That you're not really, that's why it's important to be objective as the judge. You're not really doing anything other than steering the conversation into the best possible framing. So like if they use a fallacy like, oh, you're stupid, or whatever, name calling or something, right? You can discredit that, you keep it in the record, but you don't belabor the point. Or again, a lot of the terms I would use, and these really are my terms, right, that I sort of invented for this use, and I've used them in the 10 years since in a lot of discussions, which maybe a lot of people wouldn't know what the fuck they mean then, but they do have a certain power to them. Is they'll take like a long form argument and make it short form to kind of get to the point. So it doesn't mean it's discrediting the argument, but it kind of shrinks it down. Like anything to do with sex, for example, as part of an argument would be the stimuli acme, where I would just put that in one side, and then people could decide. Sometimes chat would vote and stuff, who made the better argument. So I would be more so responsible for steering it in a certain direction. Although sometimes I would state my opinion of who I think made the better argument too, but it was often just left to interpretation. And what it does is it creates more a long form argument. Like you come to a very nuanced, eloquent discussion, so it doesn't matter even who wins. It's like both people could have made good points, but you can grade them that way and stuff too. But yeah, the main problem I have now is I don't have as big of a community. Not that I had a huge community before, but it was sort of more geared to that sort of thing, and it was easier to find. Even if we had like 5 or 10 people in there, it would be, people who were interested in that kind of thing and more active. I even tried to get, some of my viewers to do it here just for today, but it's hard to schedule it, and I don't have as big a community, and it's a different kind of thing. So it's just a different time. But yeah, it is amazing how much more smoothly that went. Like it was very easy to get that going, and I don't know, it just happened sort of more organically back then, and it was more of a novel thing to do. I mean, it's sort of novel even to do it now, but this is in the age of like Destiny as one of the only people doing something like that. Not that I was nearly as big as him, but yeah, partly it's because my channel's not big enough, but partly it's just a different kind of community that is a little bit different, and I don't know how you would just create that on demand, right? It's just different. I have more people who are interested in chess now than anything else for whatever reason, just because I played chess so much. Yeah, we'll give this a look, and basically I'll be debating against myself because I don't want to. I was thinking what I want to do with this, and what I decided is I didn't want to go in some chat room, one of these servers that has a lot of people in it, because I don't want to kind of disrupt what they're doing or even do a case. And that's kind of what this is used for normally. People host their own cases and stuff like that, and play the parts and go through everything like that. Right? They have all these custom written cases that people have made, fan made stuff. But the problem that you have is I didn't want to just do that or have to wait for one to start or something like that. I guess I could have made my own and then played it out like that with other people, but it's a little bit too elaborate to set all of that up. So what I'd rather do is I'll do the debate, and again, I failed to really get anybody to join in on it here, so that's fine. But this is the whole cool thing with the text chat format too, is like anybody could just sort of join in on a whim. It's not like you have to have voice chat or anything, so it's a little antiquated. Like I'm showing it in an old school sense that you would basically be able to, anybody could just do it, and it's a chat room setting. Of course, this server isn't going to be mine; it's going to just be some random persons who I find to be like it's going to be one that I find to basically do what do you call it? How do I even do this? Where I'm using a Phoenix Wright cursor, but it's a little fucked up where I can't I can't actually click on certain things. It kind of fucks up with certain interactions. Like let me see. Um But yeah, like we'll go in some dead server. I kind of scoped one out just to try to see what would happen with it. And what you have is the ability to, again, we'll try to use that if somebody comes in and asks us to leave or something, that could be a problem. But I'll be debating myself. I even was willing to look on some of these other sites, like an e-girl type site, with respect to whatever, you like hire somebody to play a game with you, and that wouldn't kill the authenticity of it either, because they would still be debating off their own volition, like whatever, making whatever case they want. It would just be that I would be, paying them or whatever just to play, right, just to participate. So that would have been fine, but obviously that's not how it worked out. So we'll go ahead, we'll get rid of this. But I don't see, I'm trying to do this, but it doesn't work, because now I'll have to browse through this shit. Or wait a second. First of all, I should open it. So I'll open 3 of them. I'll play the judge, the prosecution, and the defense, and I'll try to make this case out properly. And the reason why is because, again, it'll still show the format, and of course that's what I was known for being, as objective anyway. So it should be perfectly fine. It's just, you'll get in trouble for multi-boxing like that, but I don't really mind, because you're not really doing any harm. And it could be like 3 different people sitting at the same computer doing it. But this was way ahead of its time and very impressive. I'll try to stay on just a vanilla server for now, but you can also do all the characters from the other games. And they even had like other characters all together. Like, it doesn't show like my IP or some shit, does it? It basically does it in such a way that, yeah, you can use like all the other games and stuff like that too. So everything is fine here. We go ahead, we use that. It might fuck certain things up as I'm trying to do it here. Yeah, here's what we're gonna do. Is I scoped out one of these is always empty, and you can even play this in a web browser, which makes it even more accessible. So like literally anybody could just jump in. I could have the link and they could just go in there. And what's better with that one is it has like 4 different courtrooms you can choose from. I can't figure out how to do that here, where it would actually allow you to. It was like Knight's vanilla server here. Okay, thankfully I've checked it a couple days just in preparation for this to see that we have so let's just do it very basic here. Can we just yeah, stop the music. So we'll have Phoenix Wright, we'll have Phoenix Edgeworth. Just go very basic, very vanilla. I don't want to mess around with too many custom characters or anything like that. Or once they see activity in here, they'll come in and cause a disruption, and I can't stop them from doing it, because obviously it's not my server. So right, that is the problem, but let's hope we can just get this out. So I want to show it within, obviously I'll use a lot of my terms and I'll sort of explain them as I'm using them, and I'll sort of make a case on various subjects, rehashing some of my takes over the years in time on some of these. So I'll put them in kind of the proper places too, because I don't think you can really expand these windows anymore. This is a very cool, very fun thing that maybe not a lot of people know about, right? It's had its little close-knit community for what it is, but it's not really not super mainstream. And of course I haven't even used it in a long time, but we're talking about at least 10 years ago that this was kind of something that I would use, so it had to have been around at least before then. Yeah, well, I don't know if I want to mess around with the music too much either. Like, I kind of do, but let me see. Like, how loud is it gonna actually be? I don't want it to be too loud, actually. Let me lower it on here a bit. 30 is perfectly fine, I guess. It only feels fitting that you probably should do that, but I don't want it to overwhelm what we're trying to do. So you would have to like put your name and stuff too. Oh yeah, like name of your character. Let's just put it as what we are, right? Put the judge, put the defense. Not that it really is though, right? Well, you're kind of making a case one way or another, but yeah, I would actually use this at times, despite how strange that seems in the context of what I was doing. I think I misspelled it. Prosecution, so we got all the aesthetic vibe going, we got the music, we got the cursor, everything's good. So now I have to think about how I actually want to present this properly. So it is going to be a little cumbersome to type all this shit out, right? So like today we are in session for, please just don't have anybody fucking come in, the court of reason. And then we'll do also this keyboard that I'm using. Oh, this is a different courtroom than I expected too. The prosecution is ready. I'll kind of do things in short form just to... Wait, that's not even... That's like out of character. You're supposed to go here. Here, let's just try it. I guess I overestimated how easily I'd be able to just get back into it. Prosecution is ready. The defense... It seems dumb, but you'll see the power of objectivity here too, where I could play it out and make two compelling cases for the same thing. First, I'll do it very much in short form because it's meant to be more eloquent and articulate if you have more people in here and doing it more actively. But let's just try to show what the format is about. That's all I'm trying to do. So, first topic, let's go with something. What is a good thing that isn't like super obvious? Like, let's do religion. Fine, right? So now, prosecution would be the atheist trying to prove that religion doesn't exist, let's say, and the defense would be trying to defend it. So, for example, what would be the case against it? Like, I wouldn't even assert, like, or you know what, let's do it the opposite way. Or let me... God exists is my premise, and I will prove it. Right, and then we can do the objection and stuff. Actually, you could be agnostic in this capacity. No way of knowing that. You can do like all the damage animations and stuff. Actually, we have no way of knowing that. So now what you would do is basically like, again, the whole point of this is that other people would be doing it. So what would be some good arguments they would make? Like, so you're trying to tell me, or maybe I should have already changed the music to something else here. You asked if I could be here. Oh yeah, hey, how's it going? Here I am. Okay, yeah, let me try to... Here, I'll post the link and see if you can join in there. You can do it in a web browser, so you shouldn't need to download the program or anything if you want to take part. Oh, you don't have long? Okay, then don't worry about it. Let's see. Actually, we have no way of knowing that. So what would be a good argument I would make here, basically? I won't even worry about my terms too much, but let's try to make a compelling case. Do it in class. Okay, yeah, here, let me try to log in on there and actually just post the link at least. Okay, try to see if that works, and we'll see if he actually joins into the server here. I wish I would have had like my own server or something for it. So you might have to like delete the S at the end of HTTPS. For some reason it kind of bugs out like that. So then you like come in and you have to pick a character and then see what happens. Okay, so you're trying... Okay, let me try to come up with this counter argument here. What is a good argument in favor of religion here? We'll go through a whole bunch of different topics, but this one is... You're trying to say the world just came out of thin air, right? You don't have to do the fucking speech bubbles every time, though. I guess I'm just playing that up because we're starting. So you're trying to say that the world just came out of thin air. Okay, let's do some smug... You'll get caught up doing those things too much and it'll waste too much time, but... Actually, I am not making any claim at all. Now he'll be all confused. What is the confused thing? I thought he had one where he's just kind of unsure. So he has no idea. We should probably change the music for this one here. So let Edgeworth, yeah, see this cursor's a little tricky to use. Okay, here we go. So again, we've established, I mean, you have the record right here, so you can kind of see what we're discussing in here. You just gotta set the vibe for this. It's hard for me to get back in the mindset, but I always love doing this. Okay, so the burden, see this is like a logical razor right here, of proof is on the claim maker, which is you. I could simply say, I do not know about their existence, right? So that could either be seen as agnostic or it could be seen in some other context like, you know, we don't know, so you can't assert that. Right, so that's a hard thing to... I guess that's true. So now this would be like, you use the judge to Here we go. Or I'll still acknowledge their name. Mr. Wright, you are wasting the court's time with that argument. So now we'll use this as a barometer to say, okay, the defense loses like a point there. So how do we do this? Let me guess, it's not gonna work with the fucking thing. Damn it. That is like the penalty system that you're trying to fuck. It's the stupid cursor that messes it up. Some things they can click perfectly fine. But whatever, we can count that as like a -1 in their favor. Maybe I just shouldn't even use the stupid cursor. Okay, that would be a -1. So now he has to fire back and say, well, what would be a follow-up to this? You would say, what's the aim of this game? The aim of this is just to kind of portray what I'm doing. It's just like a chat room that lets you use these characters like from the series. It's like a game about lawyers and solving cases, but it just uses it as a template, right? So it's not actually the game, it's just my own thing I'm doing with it as like a placeholder. It's kind of hard to explain. So you go here and you what would I do here? Okay, well, so the burden is on him, right? So now we'll come back with maybe a bad argument. But you're an atheist. Isn't that an outward position? Right, so now we'll go, actually, it isn't. We are all born. So this will be another point for him, probably. Right, we're all born atheists. If we weren't exposed to religion, we would not be religious. Now, this is kind of an incomplete argument that you could fire back, where you actually have a pretty good point. That isn't true. Every culture in human history had its own belief systems, even fucking can't type, with no contact between one another. How does it work if it goes like over the length of the box, or does it just not let you? I forget how that works. So now this is a 1 point almost in his favor, whereas his like damaged face, like this one, they always do these like little onomatopoeia things. Oof, like you kind of role play into it a little bit. Burden of proof, like on the claim maker. Okay, see you later. Okay, so what you would do now is that could be a point. I don't know how to really keep track of this. Okay, +1 to the defense. Right, so the point being there that there is a historical cultural theme to show that if every culture has done it, then there's some credibility to it. Like, oh, how could it just be by chance? So now they could fire back and say, you've fallen into my trap. Because even though that was a good point on their side, it's going to be that if you assert credibility through human beliefs, there is a problem, right? And that would be, does that mean your, or anyone in particular, religion is wrong, is right, and every other one is wrong? So that creates a fallacy. It's like if you're a Christian or whatever, right? Use it as a placeholder. If you're a Christian, then you say that, well, what about somebody who's a Muslim or anything else, Hinduism? So you're saying every single religion in history is wrong, or every other one in the world is wrong, except for yours. Where is the other? I feel like there's another damage animation. So that would definitely be a point to the +1 to the prosecution, right? Because you get to say, how can you explain that there is nothing? I wish I could use that fucking thing. I'll just turn off this cursor. I just wanted to do it for the RP of it. But okay, so you have that. right? I can't even type properly, but okay, so you've made that argument, and then you have what would be something else? Let's have him put a little nail in the coffin here a bit with respect to, right? It's very difficult to make that argument. So you're saying everyone else's is wrong. Or no, we'll have him come back, actually. Let's play some other, see, it's too much work doing all this. You would need like one person to actually, there is a way to dispute that, right? The idea that how could one be wrong and all the other ones be right? Edgeworth would rarely do his damaged animation, actually, too. He would be pretty cool. Like, he only had like one in the whole game, I think, in the original game. Here's just the one where he slams on the desk. So it would be every culture could be describing the same thing, just giving it different names, right? So you could say, oh, they're all talking about the same god or the same basic thing, right? This creator, but they just characterize it in different ways. Where is his like death slam? This one. Now you could come back and say, well, yeah, who needs fucking debate participants when I'm so objective? I can just do both sides myself. So this one is, the problem with that is, what about polytheistic faiths? How can you be describing the same thing when there are multiple versus single gods, right? So that's a great comeback for that. If you are describing the same thing in all these different cultures, how could that be, right, the case? Now, what could be the comeback to this? It would be pretty flaky. He would struggle with this a little bit. Well, what if this is like one of those shrug moments that he actually has? He's sort of just winging it and, right, pulling something out of his ass. What if God is such an indescribable entity that whether in one form or many, they are still the same? Like, somehow you would make that case. This is kind of a flaky argument. Not a good argument. Like, this is how you would kind of strike it down as some... It's a bit of a reach, but that would be his best attempt to say, well, even though Hinduism has several gods and Christianity only has one, they're still describing the same thing, not only by different names, but by different characterizations too. Just because God is such a mythical, unbelievable being that, you know, you could characterize and personify it in many ways, in multiple forms, right? And you're all talking about the same thing, but again, that part is a little bit weak. So that would be +1 to the prosecution again. So they definitely have the better point. So now, what do we have beyond this? We have the ability to see... let me think. What other arguments would I have here? Okay, let's go back to the need to be created. It almost feels pointless to even do it like this, but I just want to use this for some reason. So I don't want to use the other one by mistake. Right, he's being a little arrogant as he's winning, and he probably will win based on how this is going. How can you say that the universe just came out of thin air? Now, this is one of my best logical razor arguments ever, actually, out of that whole format, right, that I always quote this line. How can you say the universe just came out of thin air? And so we'll make it seem like he's winning this argument for a minute here, right? That's absurd. This alone proves that God must exist. He created the universe unless you have some other way to explain it. Right, this is usually the core premise. And so now we'll maybe end off on this point. Right, so this will be like the final... Or I should like start it more smoothly, or even I could do a pursuit theme, but I have to here, this will be like the final coup de grace argument, which is, unfortunately for you, I do not have to. So it would be that I am, as you, an ignorant human being who does not know the secrets of the universe. This is much harder to admit than the false certainty you provide. However, if your premise is that everything must be created within our limited human understanding, there is a clear contradiction here, which is actually the language they would use in the series itself. If everything must be created and your answer is God, then God too must be created. Then we'll do like some sort of damage animation for him here. If not, and you make an exemption from your need to be created, then the same could be done for the universe itself. In other words, again, you're making the wide sweeping claim as your premise that, let me pause this, or some of the, I guess the red just means the song isn't available, or I don't know why it's like that. No, I just, fuck. I click off those just so it stops playing it. You have to like click here, I think. Right, that shouldn't play anything. So again, if your logic dictates that your premise is everything must be created and your answer is God, then therefore you say, well, by that logic, then God too would need to be created. So in other words, one person is saying, oh, the universe must have come out of thin air, but then you're saying, oh, God must have come out of thin air. So you're creating a bypassing of accountability there that says, again, you're claiming the absolute need that everything must be created, but then you're creating an exception to say, well, the answer to the need to be created is that God created it, but then what created God? And again, if you make an exception and exemption for God needing to be created, then you could do the same for the universe and say, well, God came out of thin air, so why can't just the universe come out of thin air? So you're not really answering that core need to be created still. So case goes to the prosecution. And there's a lot of other arguments in there, but that was at least a good core point, that part is very hard to explain. And as I often say, like, the best argument against something is a flawed argument for it. Let's switch to another topic here, right? I'll just rehash some of my favorite ones that I did. And again, we're just using this basically as window dressing, but it would be fun if I was a bigger streamer, if I had a bigger community. It could really create some fun dynamics. I would, make my own server and stuff. I think I tried to do that, but then it was too complicated or it cost money or something, so I didn't want to fuck around with it. So what's another topic? Okay, next topic is going to be the what do you call it? What is something maybe current or could be controversial? I don't really care even. What is it? We could do like Trump versus Biden, or not even Biden anymore, Harris, or we could do, or let's do like gun control since it's or you know what? Let's do abortion because I'll get banned for discussing controversial topics on here. So now Phoenix should be pro. Let's make Phoenix pro-choice. I believe in a woman. It almost should make it a female character then, like Mia or something. Right to make her own choice, right? Or whoops, I didn't mean to do that animation for it though. I believe in a woman's right to make their own choice. I prefer to treat life as valuable, and in other words, not do it. Now we'd run into like the fetus argument that you'd say it's not a life yet, it's only a fetus. Right, let's say you would go at it like that. But now the problem with this is it is only a fetus because you are not letting it develop further. I can't fucking type for shit. Further is what I meant to put. This is merely a semantics argument, right? You're only calling it that to justify killing it. Right, so that would be plus 1 point to the prosecution there, because that is a hard argument to make, or hard to refute that. So he'll be all sweating, right? The fact that, again, you would say that, again, you're only calling it that way. Like, in other words, let me continue with him. If you thought what you were doing was right, you wouldn't need to talk around it, as in, you're trying to change the definition and say, well, if we were killing a baby, it would be wrong, but we're not, because it's not yet a baby. But it's a circular argument because you're not letting it develop into a baby, so therefore that would apply to 100% of babies that at one point they're a fetus. So again, that is purely a semantics argument. I would rather you just say you're doing it out of convenience, right? And even there, I'm not against it I'm not in favor of being against the law, but I would rather stigmatize it socially and try to win through social Darwinism and say, in an ideal perfect world, it wouldn't happen. But that now he'll come back with this fallacy that often happens, like, what about assault or health cases, right? And you can easily verify and show that it is not. Those are not even close to the majority of cases that happen, like the number of abortions that happen. So that doesn't even match at all. And so what you have now is the ability to say that. What else would you say? Just, again, you don't even have to be in favor of being against the law, but you would say, yeah, in a perfect world, this guy is literally me. Azworth is me. In a perfect world, they wouldn't need to happen at all. Consider it a necessary evil at best. Right, the idea that you would obviously have, I love the little typewriter fucking sound. So you would have, again, rather than glorify it and act like it's a choice. So let me use that one then. What? Oh, whoops. What happened? What about my body, my choice? This could be a little harsh elitist victim blamer mentality that I would sometimes be nicknamed. It is also your choice to get pregnant, excluding those, obviously, those other situations. You could simply not have sex or even use protection. If all else fails, take responsibility for the result of your own actions. Now you say, like, are you saying it's only your choice when it comes to basically the consequences, right? It's your choice when it comes to the consequences of your actions, but it wasn't your choice to put it there in the first place. He'd be struggling. I mean, the judge is basically taking a nap as Edward just hands his fucking ass to him, because there isn't much of a good counterpoint here. And again, the argument wouldn't even necessarily need to be that it's illegal, but it would be sort of the moralizing position that you would say, don't act like it's a good thing or a positive thing. Right, you're doing it at worst because at most because it's necessary or for convenience. So you would rather just admit that and then you can stigmatize and discourage it while it's still completely legal. Right, so that's pretty much fine. Let me think if there's one more argument to make there, but that's the main biggest point is the semantics argument that it's kind of a self-tell. You're admitting that you think it's wrong to do by saying that, oh, you're trying to change the definition. Like, oh, it would be wrong if we were killing somebody, but we're not because, oh, we're trying to dehumanize it just to justify killing it, right? That kind of thing. And so now we have in a way that it couldn't even prevent. I sometimes say that, like, look at it from the fetus's perspective, like, oh, it wants to figure out, let's say it could comprehend what's happening. It wants to figure out why it's being killed. And it's like, oh, then they overhear people talking outside, like, oh, it's okay to kill it because it's a fetus. But then it's thinking, like, hey, that's not my fault. I can't do anything. I can't develop any faster. Just give me a few months and I'll be a baby. And then you'll feel bad for killing me. But, like, so it doesn't have a choice. You're using the fact that it's in an undeveloped state to justify killing it, but you're forcing it to be in that undeveloped state because you're not giving it the chance to develop. So again, it's a zero sum process that you would never not have that apply. So by that logic, you could just do it to everybody then. Like, right, you're using a guaranteed process to say, oh, well, this justifies doing something to end it. Like, again, but it's not really a legality argument as much. So what's another topic here? Topic 3, let's say Trump versus Harris. We can come up with some little arguments here. So I guess blue and red fits pretty well. So we'll go. Phoenix is a degenerate Harris voter. So Harris is the next best thing. Harris for president. Right, even though she just started running like a week ago. Or I keep doing that animation by mistake because he's still embarrassed about the last fucking time. So now you have let me think here. How would we show this? But see, in all objectivity, and the judge is voting for an independent, for Joe Jorgensen or somebody, to show like the two sides and then the person in the middle, which I'm more of that mindset, but let's try to play into this a little bit. So you would say, let's make him more so question that. Even the false duality that, oh, you must be a Trump supporter just by questioning it. She's the best choice, right? Somehow, let me try to think how to turn this into a proper discussion. Though, like, what would you be saying to, like, one side is using the other just to justify itself, which is textbook false duality. The idea, like, let's have the judge actually strike this down. Better than that terrible guy on the other side, let's say. This is false duality. In other words, you can't. So this would be my position as the judge to say you can't use some alternate position to justify your own. So you would say, by that logic, vote for an independent then, right? You could vote for anybody or me, like, so he's still not that other bad guy. So in other words, you're voting against. There's no such thing as voting against because you're, then you ultimately still have to vote for someone in specific. So, why the other major party? Why this particular individual? So what else? We could poke a hole in the lack of credibility because of how recent it was, like just suddenly flip the switch. Right, let me ask. Are you aware that she was unpopular with her own party, getting only 1% of the vote in her primary, right? So this kind of hurts the popularity argument. What changed? And this would be a hard thing to sort of refute. Like, what really did change? Sort of like you're just jumping on the bandwagon, the media is hyping her up, things like that. Let me think, assuming that Edgeworth would be a Trump voter here. Well, what makes you want to vote for that bad guy? We'll just keep trying to play into that sort of hysteria that people have. This is a good point you can make here. Like, if he's so bad, why did 74 million people vote for him. Like this was in 2020, right? So now you give some credibility here to say that if you break it down, that 74 million adult voting population would alone is the 20th most populated country in the world, right? Far from a marginal group that you can just discredit the way that people try to with this. Right, you could say they try to label and attack the voter as kind of the weakest argument, whatever it might be, that they'll try to label them or discredit them. So that makes it very hard to say. But they're still wrong, which you could certainly say that they are. Right, you can disagree. Right, you can disagree, but not discredit them. You were questioning the whatever, like they were questioning the very possibility of the choice, right? You can disagree with them but not discredit them. It's sort of like what else would I say about this? Like it would be the judge is actually just taking a fucking nap. Let me think. I kind of don't want to use the music either right now. So you would say that 74 million, right? Like there's a problem with it, is that if your argument or position requires discrediting a non-marginal group, there is a flaw, right? So for example, you're saying that ultimately your position would require not just that you simply disagree with 74 million people, right? The way that's certainly understandable. You can have a different opinion, different choice. The question, although that is an overwhelming, insane number, just for context, it's like more than who voted for Obama, and everybody loves Obama, like on the surface, because he's whatever, like a media darling, etc. So that makes it hard to argue that. Like, how could he be more popular than that? But he's portrayed as, oh, he's such a bad guy, right? Something is missing with that. But the point is that you have you're sort of trying to marginalize a non-marginal group, right? Marginal would be like, oh, 1 million viewers of Alex Jones who are crazy and might believe or do what he says or something like that, right? That would be a marginal group, not 74 million. Again, that would be the 20th most populated country in the world if you broke it down, and that would just be adults of voting age. Like, obviously, in a population, you're going to have kids, you're going to have people who just don't vote, you're going to have other, other elements of the population aside from just that 74 million who happen to vote that one way. So that isn't insane. Again, that would be my friend who is just here, who is from Australia. I was going to use that if we had the debate with him. Like, did you know that 3 times as many people voted for him as there are in the whole of Australia? Like, so 3 times the population of that country, of that continent, right, was voting for them alone. So doesn't that give them a certain amount of credibility? You wouldn't discredit that large of a group on its own. So for example, or we'll make a further argument here too. Also, when it comes to media bias, think of it like this. If all it took for you to turn on your neighbors, if you will, because that, again, that's almost 1 in 2 ordinary people or adults of voting age or whatever, neighbors, was a handful of networks, a few dozen talking heads owned by a few wealthy people, you didn't have much faith in them to begin with. Oh, it just kind of keeps going, I guess, if it goes over the end. So in other words, those are the 2 core fallacies that you would be pointing at. If you have to discredit, what exactly did I say? Right, like, again, if your argument or position requires discrediting a non-marginal group, like, again, 74 million people, maybe something's wrong with that argument. Again, not even that you disagree with them, but you have to completely discredit them or personally attack them, which is such a large number of people, that's hard to do. Or, when it comes to media bias, if all it took for you to turn on your neighbors was a handful of networks, again, corporate-owned media networks owned by a handful of billionaires with a few dozen talking heads on them, Right. That's all it takes for you to not simply have a different opinion than other people, but to turn on them and to attack them and criticize them and discredit them. I wonder if that's him or what. Fuck. Or it could just be somebody else because they see that 3 people are in here. Web might imply that he is using it in like the browser. Yeah, 3 times the population of Australia, so you wouldn't discredit it in any other way. Fuck. Or he'll always play like chess in his class too. So what was that? I kind of lost my train of thought. So we've gone through a couple good arguments here. Let me try to think. I should have prepared this sort of a little better. This is a little bit of a depressing way to do it, but I won't relent. I'm going to do this and I'll do it again next week too. Even if I have to do it alone, I don't care. Like I'm playing the role both sides. I'm making the argument. What's happening? What does that mean? Why is it saying none? So what do I have here? I have the ability to I just completely lost what I was saying. Um, you didn't have much faith, so those arguments would be the point to give you credibility. What else would I say? Like, okay, but the bad guy just loves rich people, right? But they must not love him. After all, every major corporate outlet clearly hates him, right? As far as the media bias. And then that would make you think, like, why is one side being coddled by the media so much? And we'll do one final point where it's like, if anything, I would feel more comfortable seeing him held in check that way. In other words, you would say, I would vote for them not because I even think they're good, but because I feel like they're being held in check. So I'd rather see somebody held in check rather than the other side that isn't held in check, that you would say, you know, oh, they might be just as bad or whatever, but they would be like, you know, they would be coddled by the media versus somebody being held accountable. So you'd rather see the one get held accountable, even if you think they're worse, at least they'll be called out as being worse. Right, so sometimes that goes a long way. Let me change to the next topic. Topic 4 could be, so we've gone through which ones? Does it actually go all the way back? We've gone through like religion. We've gone through, I'm going to get IP banned from the server for creating such a shit show, and even multi-boxing, but I don't think I'm doing any harm. Nobody's even here, and why would it matter? Right, this server is more dead than my fucking stream. So now we have, if anything, I would feel more comfortable seeing him held in check. Wait, what? In check that. I don't know what happened with that. We have, let me try to rehash a few more. I don't know how long I want to do this for, but I wish I could use the minus and stuff there, but I can't. For some reason, this mouse cursor doesn't like certain things here. Maybe he said it earlier and I just didn't notice him saying it, but okay, what is another topic? Let's do like transgender and stuff like that. So this will be there's flaws obviously on both sides of this argument, so how would I make it? Basically just to say that what would be the hard position? Like, this is the one where the Edgeworth sort of mindset here would actually be poked a hole in more. Like, this would be like somebody on the right, let's say, like, oh, men are men, etc., things like this. But you would say now, like, define it, and they start off on the right foot. So like, this would be the first point, would be biology would tell, they're all fucking reading their little papers as we're doing this. Biology would tell you that, right? For example, but now, so that would be like, oh, point 1 to the prosecution. But this is where people make this argument, but then they take it too far. But biology says nothing about clothing. For example, in nature, we are all naked, let's say. So, for example, like high heels, right? What about high? This is sort of like a straw man argument, actually, but whatever. I'm assuming that he would be against this. What about high heels would you object to on a man, for example? So now he has trouble maybe making this case. Therefore, women. Now you'd say, like, what part of biology? Look at him be all smug too. We'll do just the regular face, but what part of that has to do with women? Right now, you go back to the core point. And we'll put a little here. In reality, am I clicking? Here we go. In reality, that has entirely to do with height. Women on average are shorter. That's all it is. So all it would take is a short man to justify wearing them, right? It's based only on around height. There's nothing more really to it, right? So we get antiquated with these sort of societal stereotypes, and that's why people want to break out of them too, because there's no functional basis to it. That doesn't mean I'm arguing that people should do it, but if you think about it logically, there is no other reasoning. At least with a bra, there is a physical expectation between genders that is different. Right? This isn't true of most other things, from nail polish to high heels, basically, right? It would be hard to argue against those. Now let's have him come back and say something like, okay, by that logic, why worry about gender then? This is more like the objective. This is almost more what the judge would say. Why not just acknowledge it is biology? But this is kind of not even something he would say in this position, but given how he started, and separate it from everything else. In other words, right, don't make it about gender, because on one hand you'll say, oh, gender is fluid and non-binary, etc., but then you would also play into them and say, well, I want to identify as the other gender to justify wearing certain types of clothing, but why not look at it objectively and say that has nothing to do with it? So you kind of get trapped in that biology argument that people say, well, you know, people will say, oh, it's biology, but biology doesn't say you can wear this type of clothing or not wear this type of clothing. That has nothing to do with it. Again, except for, I guess, the bra would be the one good example because of an actual expectation that is different, but everything else would be the same. So let's look at also in this topic, sports. Okay, what about sports? So what would Phoenix be in the favor of? Would be like, I don't know why he's just saying it like that, but you could say, what else? There is a simple answer. Stop calling them men's and women's sports and let merit decide. This is an argument that I made many years back. Like, you know, just have, this wasn't even because of gender. I just said it in general, period. Like, you know, let the best athletes compete, and if the majority of them happen to be men, then so be it. So you could do it that way, just have unisex sports. And so, for example, it wouldn't be an issue then. But what you can't do is you can't call it women's sports and then play into the false duality of gender and say, well, you can identify and therefore seemingly benefit from weaker competition if you're a male, and it creates all this confusion. Why not just have a unisex sports league where anybody can compete and you don't care about gender, even if you think that's unfair to women? At least then you know what you're getting into, instead of trying to co-opt it and adopt it in a league that's already been built on the foundation of being about gender till then, right? Gender and force segregated up until now, and now all of a sudden you kind of flip the script and do it there. So what's another good topic here? Like, that would be the real solution. Just have unisex sports, so then it doesn't matter. But for the ones that are actually named, like men's basketball, women's basketball, or whatever, why would you want to hijack those and try to make it fluid or confusing when the whole basis of the whole basis of it is that it's called that and it's based around that historically in the first place. Topic 5, I forget what we're even at now. What's another good topic here? I should probably go through some of my terms and sort of try to explain them. But the point is, it would provide like an outline for arguments more so than arguments themselves. A lot of these are just my own takes or whatever, but some of them are pretty memorable. It's just like, I don't know how to really explain the format too much better than just showing it like this, though. You would have it within the context of objectivity. Like, none of these arguments, let's actually review them a little bit. None of these are really ad hominem where you're just saying, oh, you're dumb, or just something emotional, right? It's all like rooted in some sound foundation, basically. So this is at least the formula that you would go for, right? Religion. So he believes God exists. So pretend he's Christian or whatever religion you want to say, right? The shallow subjection. We have no way of knowing that. So he could either be agnostic, or even if he's just straight up atheist. So you're trying to say the world just came out of thin air. I don't have to make any claim like that at all. I could just say I'm an ignorant human being and I don't know anything, right? Or I guess we say that later. Burden of proof is on the claim maker, which is you. I could simply say I don't know, right? I don't know one way or another. I guess that's true. You're wasting the court's time, but you're an atheist. Isn't that an outward position? It's not. We're born as atheists. If we weren't exposed to religion, you could prove this with like a thought experiment in the jungle. Like, if you're born in the jungle, you wouldn't be a Christian because you wouldn't come into contact with society, etc., and be indoctrinated into the church, etc., at a young age. That isn't true. This is a great argument here for the history of it, though. Every culture is. I'm praising my own arguments, but I mean, you can still be objective about it. Like, every culture is human in history had its own belief systems, even with no contact. Which means, again, why would everybody be coming to the same conclusion? And the way that I would almost explain it would be, well, you have this psychological need that you desire to, you know, you might desire some closure or peace of mind or certainty and answers to all the curiosities of existence around you, but it doesn't mean that it makes it true. You've fallen into my trap. If you assert credibility through human beliefs as a problem, then you'd say, okay, so every culture throughout history came up with their own religion, which validates that, oh, that means religion must be true. But now you have a problem because you just said, oh, that's so credible that everybody came up with a religion, so that means that it's valid. But now if you hold it under tighter scrutiny, you say that means that one of them is right and all the other ones are wrong. Or how would you explain all the other ones then, right, with all the specifics and minutia within? There is a way to dispute that. Every culture, I can't fucking type, by the way, but could be describing the same thing just in different names. But that is kind of like a weak, cope mental gymnastics type of argument. But that's just like him trying to latch on to anything he can. What about this is pretty good of a comment too. What about, religions that have multiple gods? How can you be describing the same thing when there are multiple? God is such an indescribable entity now, he's really going off the deep end with mental gymnastics, but it's the best I can come up with. That whether in one form or many, they are still the same. Not a good argument, plus prosecution. How can you say that the universe just came out of thin air? Right? That's absurd. This alone proves that God must exist. He created the universe. Unless you have some other way to explain it. Psych locks, I don't have to. I'm an ignorant human being who does not know the secrets of the universe. This is much harder to admit than to fate than the false certainty you provide. However, if your premise is that everything must be created, there's a contradiction. If everything must be created and your answer is God, then God too must be created. If not, you make an exemption that, oh, God doesn't need to be created, then the same thing could be said about the universe. So again, you're making your claim. It's your own argument folding on itself to say the reason why God must exist is because he must create everything. But then you say everything must be created, but then, oh, God doesn't need to be created, so then why can't I just say the universe doesn't need to be created, right? You're not really even applying your own absolute criteria consistently. Case goes to prosecution. Next topic, abortion. Okay, woman has a choice. I prefer to treat life as valuable. That's kind of like a snarky thing. It's not a life yet. It's only a fetus. It is only a fetus because you're not letting it develop further. This is merely semantics argument. You're only calling it that to justify killing it, sort of dehumanizing it. If you thought what you were doing was right, you wouldn't need to talk around it. Rather, you just here doing it out of convenience. And again, the conclusion there isn't even that you would have to say it should be illegal to do it, right? That's not even the point. What about assault and health cases? They're not the majority at all. In a perfect world, they wouldn't need to happen. Consider it necessary evil. What about my body, my choice? It is also your choice to get pregnant. You could not simply not have sex or use protection. Again, excluding those other cases, which is not the majority. Take responsibility for the result of your own actions. Are you saying it's only your choice when it comes to the consequences? Right, like once you're dealing with it, but getting there, you'll just act like, oh, you were somehow not in control of those events, circumstances leading up to it. Topic 3, Trump versus Harris. Harris for president. Why is that? She's the best choice. But this is almost like a self RP thing that I'm doing. Better than the sad part is this is probably still a better quality discussion than what you would have with other people because they're just so stupid with all due respect. Like the majority of people are not going to be this articulate, honestly. And that's not even me fluffing myself up. It's just like this was over a long period of time that these things kind of came about and I articulated them, right? So I'm kind of going through a collection of good takes over the years. Better than the terrible guy. False duality. By that the judge is even chiming in with the logical razor here. By that logic, vote for an independent or me. Like in other words, if your only reason is that you're voting against somebody, then you could just vote for anybody. So it's not a good argument for why you're voting for that person in particular. Let me ask: are you aware of the unpopular with her own party? 1% of the vote. What changed? What makes you want to vote for the bad guy? If he's so bad, why does 74 million people vote for him? If you break it down, this is the 20th most populated country in the world. See, these are all like, informational, foundationally based arguments, which is why I kept holding up the paper too. It's like they're reading this from a thing, from a script or some notes that they took. You can disagree but not discredit. If your position requires discrediting that many people, 74 million, there's a flaw. When it comes to media bias, if all it took for you to turn on your neighbors is that a handful of networks owned by a handful of people criticize them, then you didn't have a very good thing. He just loves rich people, but they must not like him because their media outlets are constantly criticizing him. If anything, I would feel more comfortable seeing him held in check. Okay, trans stuff. I don't know what what the fuck that even is. Biology would tell you, but again, so this is like a half right argument that like, oh, biology is absolute, biology is true, but biology doesn't say anything about wearing high heels or any of these other. Why is that like highlighted? Has to do with women. It has nothing to do with all these antiquated things, right? Biology doesn't come with any clothing inherently. You're born naked and you're kind of, it doesn't say that you should, whenever you make these natural arguments, like biology also doesn't say that you drive in a car or that you sit at a desk or that you sit at a computer all day or something like that, right? None of those things are rooted in nature or biology. So you're not really going by that naturalistic perspective anyway. But even if you were, what you would do is basically say that you would have, the ability to look at it like, it's not a natural perspective. It's a question of, again, the functional basis. Like I love the high heels example. The reason why people wear high heels isn't because of gender, right? It has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with height. So on average, women are shorter. So yes, they might wear them for that reason, categorically. But if there's a short man, then that alone would justify it. So it's kind of hard to make that argument otherwise, just because we're used to something. So that's where people take it too far. They'll try to say, well, gender is absolute because of biology, but then they'll make these non-absolute subjective claims to go along with it, like, oh, only women can dress this way or only men can do certain things. Like all those things are subjective. So you're trying to falsely equate something objective like biology to something subjective like societal standards for clothing or activities or other behaviors and choices and preconceived notions. At least with the bra, there is a physical expectation that is different, right? Again, on average, this isn't true of most other things: nail polish, high heels. By that logic, why worry about gender? Why not just acknowledge it and separate it from everything else? What about sports? There's a simple answer: stop calling them men's sports, women's sports. Let merit decide. So whatever, at least that gives a basic idea. I don't know if I'm trying to think. I should have maybe had some more notes or some of my takes ready. Let me try to think of a couple more here. All right, let's do one more like lighthearted one. Knight versus bishop in chat, since people always try to fight me on this. So Phoenix can defend the knight. Like, let's start with this. Knights are better in closed positions. And then you would just counter by saying bishops are better overall. When you judge piece value, it's not under ideal conditions. It is over millions of games in best and worst case scenarios. Let's use a word that Ezra actually used. Ergo, the fact that you need to qualify it is telling. In other words, with a bishop, I wouldn't need to say, oh, it's better in closed positions. No, it's just better, period. Right? So the game is going to sometimes have closed positions, sometimes have open positions, sometimes you're going to have an octopus knight, right? So you can go back, what about octopus knights? Then you could say, what about bishop pairs, right? So it kind of comes to the same thing. You can say in the ideal condition, but you wouldn't need to say that, right? You qualify it. Like, even good players sometimes fall for this trap. Like, again, bishops are objectively better than knights, period. Just in the course of millions of games, every position, all the best case, all the worst case, everything combined. But people say, oh, well, knights are better in this one case. If there's an octopus knight, or if it's a closed position. But you don't need to qualify it that way. Like, you assume those positions are going to happen sometimes, but over the course of general play, right, the bishop is going to be far more effective on average and generally. So let's do another topic. Like, okay, topic FIDE women's titles, basically. So we'll do, this feels kind of silly to do like this, but I just want to show what it would be like, basically, if you were to do it here, because I could just kind of talk through it, which for the most part I am. I'm just putting in certain little key phrases, like women titles shouldn't exist, and then we can fall for some sort of fallacy. That's anti-women. Actually, it's pro-women because it implies they are just as capable as men. And then I'll come back like, but they aren't. There's never been a woman 2800 or world champion. But there's been Judith Polgar. But there's Judith Polgar. Now, this is both an outlying factor. She's the exception, but that helps my point. Even then, she wasn't the best. The best argument you could make here is one of sample size, to say that's a sample size fallacy. Historically, chess has been more popular among young boys than young girls. That's because they have been mistreated, right? Like, women have been mistreated. So that justifies special titles, which it obviously wouldn't. Right, it would be more like, oh, it would just justify, let's stop the mistreatment. So you'd say, the only reason why men have been better is because historically a lot more of them have played and taken interest, right? That sample size has certainly been huge over the course of time, right, in favor of, but women, like, you could say women tried and failed or something. What if they simply had different preferences? Chess is only a game after all. Like, it doesn't mean that you just assume that everybody's trying to play chess, right? You assume that everybody is trying to do it when really, what if they just prefer, like, you could even say a stereotype, like, oh, they prefer playing with dolls or something, but that doesn't mean that it's a negative. Like, it's just a game, so you can do whatever you want. It doesn't mean that you have to play it, or, so if you want to, you can, but generally society has maybe encouraged that more of young boys, or just generally they've taken more interest in it, so it's just not, it wasn't as common historically, whereas now it obviously is, where and Laszlo Polgar, Judith Polgar's father, pressured all three of his daughters to do that, right? And they all became very good. So that always proves gender is not a factor, because again, Judith Polgar is better than 99.9% of men ever to play chess, right? The only ones better are among the best players in the world and the best players in history. So it's like it's a bit of a tough thing. Judith Polgar works in both favors. You say, well, the best woman ever was only 2,700, so that shows you they're not as good as men. But the fact that a woman can be 2,700 shows you they can be almost just as good as men. And she's an extreme example in both senses. Like, it validates that women can be really good, right, among the best players in the world. But it also says, well, if that's the most extreme best example that they have, it also means that, obviously then they're not world champion caliber. But again, there's a difference of 100 rating and 150 rating from the peak, basically. Does that really justify saying that women as a gender are just not as capable of being as good as men, or they're at some major disadvantage? Which I don't think that's true. Even if you compare that to other sports and stuff, the difference would be far greater, right? So she's 2,700 rated in an era where the highest rated players are 2,800, 2,850, etc. Right? So it is a meaningful difference, don't get me wrong, but it's not as big of a difference as what you would see from like the best player in the NBA to the best player in the WNBA. That would be an astronomical difference because of physical advantages. It wouldn't be that astronomical with Polgar. For example, she beat Gary Kasparov and she beat Magnus Carlsen in a game. You would never see the best WNBA player beat LeBron James or whoever, best NBA player in a 1v1 game. It would never happen. It would happen 0 out of a million times. Whereas here you would say, she did do it 1 out of a handful of times, obviously, that she lost all the other ones or drew some of them, but like, for her to even be capable of doing that does validate it quite a bit. So what else do we have? I should have just had a list of oh, it doesn't even let me do it. Testimony, and then how long does it actually stay there? That's weird, actually. Yeah, it would stay. It never. First of all, it never appears when the judge is here, like the judge isn't testifying. Or we could recreate some famous trials, like the Daryl Brooks trial, or the. That would be kind of fun, actually. There's so many fun things you could do with this. You could recreate some real trials, like, but try to see the alternate versions. Like, what if you were to try to win the O.J. Simpson trial as Marsha Clark, and you tried to fucking, right the wrong of O.J. Simpson getting away and stuff like this. Right, Casey Anthony getting going to jail. Jose Baez is like the real life Manfred von Karma, where he was always touting his undefeated record, which I'm not sure if he's still undefeated. But yeah, Daryl Brooks is a fucking total clown trying to defend himself. Some of these trials that I sort of have watched over time, or like even the Jodi Arias trial, I fucking reacted to on stream at one point. So let's see. Let me try to get one more in here. Like, what's another good topic or debate that I always come up with here? I can't think offhand. But no, it would just be using these logical razors and things like, again, ad hominem would be thrown out by the judge. All these kind of things would be held in check. So you're trying to have a high level see, like, that's why it doesn't matter even who won those discussions. It's like they're happening at least a moderately high level where it's a little deeper than what you typically hear, I feel like, where people just kind of insist upon something, or again, not be very objective about it. If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself, I guess. But it is kind of sad that I have to do this. I'd rather go on Omegle, but you're banned from doing that. Or I guess you could do it in text chat still, but that's one of the things that's banned on Twitch. Or what it kind of is like, it's actually gone offline too anyway, which is kind of surprising. So what you have now is the ability to, he probably got in trouble in class for doing that, or maybe I just didn't see it when he said that. I forgot how this works. This is like the out of character stuff, but people would always put it like in brackets too when they would do that. It makes me appreciate whatever little following I had before too, because at least it was I didn't realize how hard it would be to fucking do some of this shit when it's such a different, weird format that is just okay. Let me try to think of one more topic, and maybe that's good enough. This is kind of exhausting to do, and all the typing is kind of irritating, right? That you almost shouldn't have to do it like this. I don't know why it says like this. What does that have to do with women? Why is that highlighted like that? What's another good take or topic, right? I went through some of the good ones, logical razors. The religious one was good. That kind of sums up my whole style, right? If God created the universe, then what created God? Like that simple statement kind of makes a whole claim by itself. As far as a logical razor, that's very quick and to the point and very, you know, hard to refute that premise because you're kind of holding it on itself where you're the one who's making the claim that it must exist, etc. There's kind of like the pro-non anti-dynamic of you know it creates like a Bolshevik rhetoric fallacy that like being religious isn't outward, being an atheist is somehow outward when it's not, right? Like you don't have to say anything to be an atheist, but you do have to say something and believe something outwardly to be religious. So you're the one who's making the outward claim and practice of doing that. Whereas simply not doing it is not a claim. You don't define people by what they don't do. You define them by what they do, right? So let me think. What is another one? Something on the tip of my tongue, like some of my other good topics, but I can't remember them offhand. Like, damn, I don't know. I should have almost done a term review or something. So I'll do this again, I guess, next week. But I may even do it with myself. The one thing I'm happy about is the fact that basically nobody came in or bothered me or even seemed to notice me doing this. So that's fine. So I'm treating this like it's my own server. I can just fuck around with it, but it's really somebody else's. But the server's always fucking dead. So I guess nobody cares. But there must be a certain amount of upkeep that it still takes to keep it around. So I'm surprised. Or maybe people only come in at very specific times where they sort of have a trial to do or something like that. Like, let me debate something in gaming, for example. What is a good, like the crouch button in GTA 5 that triggered me so much? Like, you don't need a crouch button. Or I don't know how to take that away then. Wait, that is actually weird. He's just gonna say whatever. It's gonna stay there the whole time. Even if I put cross examination, it would still they would show that instead, wouldn't it? Or maybe it doesn't. Um, in a third person shooter, it is very important. Like they all have it. You could choose simply not to use it, right? Or something similar, like, oh, Dark Souls is good because it doesn't have music, but it should still have music, like in all the levels and areas and stuff. You could just simply turn it off if you don't like it, right? So it's kind of like how would I make this argument a little bit, or like uh console versus PC. It's like anything you can do on a PC, you can do on a console anyway, right? It's just better, and the aiming is even admittedly bad because it's like whack-a-mole with the console auto targeting, like how consoles would have auto aim as an option, PC games wouldn't. So that's kind of like the developer even telling you, yeah, the aim on console is shitty, so you need auto targeting to help you, whereas you don't need it on PC. You can just aim for yourself. So what else would I say to justify this? Like, it's just a normal feature, a function to have. You don't need it. It doesn't help you. But like you can kind of duck behind a car from a distance instead of just having to latch onto it. There are many times you can use it to do long range cover with something in the distance, right, obscuring you, instead of needing to be right on it. But yeah, in general, like, why should you need to justify having a crouch button in a third-person shooter? That every game in existence has that. Or even, what's another good one with gaming is like, pause buttons are for noobs, right? But then it's like, Sekiro has a pause button. Does that mean it isn't hard? Right, the only games where pausing helps is strategy, where you can like plan your next move or something like that, like in an RTS game. That's why they kind of black out the screen so you can't see the position of everything when you pause it. Like in Warcraft 3, it would always do that. So you have they said, oh, Dark Souls doesn't have a pause button because that makes it harder, it's hardcore. But also, again, Sekiro, which is considered very hard and made by the same company, does have a pause button. Does that mean that it was obviously done just because it was just done out of laziness, consistent with perpetual online design and no lip syncing for limited face exposed dialogue? It kind of shows you how scuffed some of the design was, despite how great the game obviously is. Also, they copied Castlevania because that's basically the gothic, inspiration of that and everything. It was the Castlevania we deserved but didn't get. Right, the 3D version of a Castlevania that the Castlevania series itself didn't make. I hope the music wasn't so loud that it was like blocking out what I was saying, because sometimes, like in the Case Maker, it was kind of doing that, where you have it was just like way too fucking loud. Whatever. So this at least shows the possibility of it. I'm not entirely happy with how I had to do this, but I guess there's not much you can do about it. But it just shows you that thing has stood the test of time. Like, it was around like over 10 years ago when I would fuck around with it, and now it's still there for the same, you know, it's just as easy to use. You just kind of use it as a chat room and kind of play into all this kind of stuff that is pretty fun. Maybe it doesn't feel as valuable today because everybody's so into voice chat, like if you are going to debate stuff. But yeah, the main point is that the judge is trying to basically moderate things, and I'm going to use some of my terms and my logical razors and different things like that to try to be objective and try to set it up in such a way. Let's see if it goes away if you do that, because it'll do it, but then yeah, it'll make that disappear, I guess. Or I was gonna say, I thought you have to say something to make it appear only over the judge, but you can just make it appear anywhere.